Hello, and welcome to today's session. As always, I'm your host, Kevin Grote, Staff Systems Engineer here at VMware. Today, we've got a really special session. I'm a big fan of whiteboards, and I was asked by one of our customers to create a whiteboard that wrapped up the unified hybrid cloud story from a technical perspective, including things like vRealize automation, NSX, vCloud Air, other people's clouds, advanced networking services, all of this great stuff. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to walk you through that whiteboard, hopefully so that you as engineers and architects will be able to take this whiteboard and leverage it for yourself in your own conversations, overlaying it into your own infrastructure to understand possibilities for growth and how VMware's unified hybrid cloud vision fits into your needs and demands going forward. Feel free to follow along. We're going to be doing this full screen, and there's a total of 2 sessions, this being one of them. So be sure to watch them both to see them both stitched together. Hope you enjoy it. So without further ado, let's now take a look at the unified hybrid cloud whiteboard. So inside the unified hybrid cloud, we've got our on-premise and our off-premise environments. So let's click into each one of these. We're all familiar with our on-premise environments. And this is what we've been dealing with for years. Inside of off-premise, we've got our data center. We've got our data center here in all of its shiny golden data center-y glory. Inside of our off-premise environments, and as much as I abhor the word cloud, right, we've got our cloud infrastructures. And a better way to approach cloud, at least for me, is to think of it as software, platform, and infrastructure as a service. But I digress. So we've got our on-premise data center, we've got our off-premise clouds. Now, let's first zero in on our known items. Okay, so inside of our knowns, as we look at this unified hybrid cloud vision, we have to start by knowing what we know. So to know what we know, we have an understanding of where VMware has been already. That's squarely inside of the data center with vSphere. vSphere giving us capacity, flexibility around compute, around storage, as well as networking. And storage and networking inside of these spaces, specifically around the storage that is presented into the virtual machines and the networks that are created for the virtual machines. Let's not forget, VMware's been in the networking business for a long time through standard distributed switches, etc. Now, if we look out at the cloud, inside of the cloud space, there are really a couple key offerings that make up vCloud Air. When we look at the core offerings, and keep in mind, we're not going to be focused on things like disaster recovery and all of that. We're just focusing on the infrastructure components. We've got your virtual private cloud. So inside of virtual private cloud space, we have individual resources that can be assigned, but they're all going to be assigned inside of a greater whole, which means that it's all shared resources, shared hardware. Then the other side of the spectrum, you have dedicated cloud. Now this is going to be non-shared hardware. Somebody could even take their allotted hardware and carve that up into shared hardware virtual private clouds of their own if they were so inclined. Maybe a larger company breaking it down into regions or departments or something like that. So with these two, we are able to provision out into the cloud just like we do inside of the data center. We're able to provision compute. We're able to provision storage. And we're also able to provision networks. Specifically networks that are being used by those virtual machines that are living inside of that cloud. They could be routed, isolated, or just individual networks inside of that space. This is why when we look at vCloud Air, specifically inside of that infrastructure as a service space, it is really just a vSphere data center for rent. That's all it is. So now we think outside of these core knowns, and we have other facets to consider. There's more inside of our data center and outside of our data center than just those core resources. Inside of our data center, we've got physical workloads that we still need to address. And not just the physical workloads, but also physical server and compute availability that's sitting there. Some things that need to be addressed solely by physical workloads. We also have existing and go forward SAN arrays and storage networks that we're dealing with. Not to mention physical networks that are still in play. Some of them very simple, some of them remarkably sophisticated. And we have to find a way to bind those into the virtual space and allow them to scale. When we look at cloud, it's not just about what we're doing with vCloud Air. It's about what customers are doing inside of other clouds and even SaaS-based applications. Things like EC2 or Azure or even SaaS-based applications inside of that space. So now let's pause for a second and say we've got all of this, we have our knowns, and we also have the spaces in which we know we need to grow to provide holistic capabilities for a unified hybrid cloud. And these are all things that exist inside of today's infrastructure, as it were. So now the next step is to look at how do we migrate and prepare ourselves to move our workloads from on-premise to off-premise, and how do we create alignment between these different infrastructures? Well, one that I think I'm always kind of curious why it doesn't come up more often is ODT, or offline data transfer. Effectively, it's just a NAS device that gets shipped to the customer. They load their virtual machines, and then that encrypted device is shipped back to us, at which point it is deployed inside of their cloud. Now, keep in mind, it could be deployed inside of their virtual private cloud, or it could be deployed inside of their dedicated cloud. And this is really kind of an asynchronous, deploy and destroy sort of modality, right? They're going to take what they need and seed it out into the cloud. And this is going to be far more efficient than taking machines one by one and moving them out there. Although that could be done, it's just going to take a lot more time. So one of the clearest and easiest ways to seed is to use an offline data transfer. Now, this is really cool and it's unique to VMware simply because we're able to do it because the workload that lives outside in the virtual private or dedicated cloud is going to still just be a vSphere workload. It's the same workload that existed on-prem inside of the data center. You don't have to recode your machines and your workloads in order to get them out there. They're still just the same. We're just moving them out there. Now, how do we connect once the workloads are there? Well, there's a couple key ways, and then we'll talk about a couple more as we progress. So one simple one is leveraging IPsec VPN. So IPsec VPN would be a clear means of communication out there. Another would be what we would refer to as a direct connect. So direct connect basically just places an appliance at the edge of the cloud for your telco provider to connect to. And which one you connect to is going to be dependent upon, where exactly you are in the country and the geo that best benefits you. So now you've got those. We've got an IPsec receiving point, and we've got a direct connect that's sitting at the edge of your cloud. Well, IPsec, you would use VPN inside of your data center, and you can create a connection out to your cloud. And that's going to be the most common way to do it. It's simple to set up. It's relatively straightforward. Everyone has that kind of access. Now, Direct Connect, slightly more exotic. That's going to more than likely be like an MPLS connection that's going to be routed out to the Direct Connect node. Okay, so now we're able to effectively extend the MPLS connection through telco out into the cloud. So we've got a couple simple ways to approach that. Now, once the connections are made, we've got machines, some that are still inside the data center, some that are now existing out in the cloud because maybe you did the seed with the offline data transfer. So now you have workloads that are sitting in both locations. vCloud Air also has a cloud connector node built in. If you deploy a cloud connector server inside of the on-premise, you'll be able to migrate workloads from on-premise to off-premise. But it's very important to note that those workloads inside of this framework are going to be powered off, right? Those are going to be cold migrations because those workloads are going to be powered off and then they're going to be motioned out into the cloud. Because it's still a vSphere data center for rent, we can take those powered off workloads and we can move those workloads out into the cloud. So the cool part is, though, you'll be able to take those workloads and you can move them back, which means that we get to circumvent the whole Hotel California issue of sending workloads out to the cloud, but then not being able to bring them back. With this instance, you'll be able to send the workloads out and bring the workloads back as needed, which means that not only are you more scalable, you're also more elastic. So you can actually shrink your resource consumption as needed. So now we have a clear vision of kind of where we sit, where a lot of customers and folks inside of their data centers are going to sit today, where they've got some vSphere, they've got some physical workloads that they're still connecting to. They may be leveraging cloud infrastructure as a service and some multiple clouds, and they're going to need the ability to seed out into the cloud and also work things out from a virtual machine migration perspective. Next, we're going to take a look at what it looks like when we start applying automation into this space. Thanks again for taking time with me today. Hopefully you found this information valuable as always. I look forward to talking to you again soon, and until then, be sure to reach out to your local engineering and sales teams for more information on these fantastic products and so much more. And be sure to check out the playlists here for more content regarding end user compute, software-defined data center, mobility, storage, and software-defined networking, and more. And also, be sure to follow me on Twitter for more updates. Thanks again, have a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again really soon.